3, 2, 1. We should be live. Welcome, everybody, to the God is Awesome podcast. This is a podcast where we go over regular Christians' testimonies and we talk about how God has worked in their life for better or for worse. And it's usually for better. And I don't want to be theological about this, but sometimes we think it's for worse. But God is ultimately awesome. Today we have our special guest probably the person that I've known the longest on this podcast. His name is Ryan Larson. I call him Larson. Larson, what's up? Say what's up, man.
What's going on, buddy?
Super glad to have you on here. Before we get to the interview, we just want to make sure that you all know if you guys find something interesting, like you find that his testimony, Ryan's testimony, would appeal to someone else that you might know, please tag them in the comments or share this video. If you think that if you want to give and cheer on Ryan, type in a hashtag Go Ryan, or if you're watching this in the future, hit hashtag replay just so I know where everyone's coming from. It helps us rank up in Facebook's rankings. You know what I mean? We're trying to get known out here. Anyway, Larson, tell us who you are, a little bit who you are, where you're from, how you came to know Christ, some of your back history, maybe what you do now, how old are you? Give us some general information to start off with.
Well, you already know my name now. Born and raised a good 18 years of my life in Port St. Lucie. Started going to Sunlight when I was probably a few years old. And had been going there up until I left, where I met you, where I met a bunch of people that I have relationships with. Then I moved to Georgia. I met my wife at Sunlight when we went on, where did we go?
Universal.
Yeah. We went to Universal and to the concert. What was the concert called?
I think it was Rock the Universe.
Was it? Maybe. Yeah, might have been one of those that we went to, them concerts back in the day. Mm-hmm. Met her on that and moved to Georgia for a few years, and then 2 years ago now moved down to Ocala, and this is where I am now.
Okay.
Got 2 kids, married. I work for DOC.
What's that?
Department of Corrections.
Gotcha.
I work in a prison.
Okay.
Can't complain.
Yeah.
At least not too much anyway.
Yeah, no one will listen, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. You mentioned that you grew up with a childless fatherhood or without too much of a father in your life, a father figure in your life. Tell us about your home life.
My home life was good. My mom worked a lot because of the fact that it was basically just her. So she worked like 3 jobs to support me as a kid. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, which is the reason why we've developed such a strong relationship. I was always at church with my grandparents and stuff like that. The only father figure, my father left when I was a year old, and always, throughout the years would call and say he was coming to get me, say he was coming to pick me up, would never come. I'd be out I guess as a kid, my grandparents told me I'd be out in the yard waiting for him to come, 4 or 5 hours sitting out in the yard, and never showed up. So,
dang.
The only father figure I really had back then was my grandfather. And, he's really now the only Whitney's dad is, he's kind of that figure to me now. We've developed a really strong relationship, but for the first, 20, 23 years of my life, my grandfather was really all I had father figure wise. My upbringing was good. There was a lot of love there. It was a struggle, but I just had a lot of, I think, resentment and anger issues built up because of what happened as a kid. And so it was something that I just kind of had to learn to cope with and deal with.
What does that do for you? Without a father, did you feel it? Like, was it just that one instance, or was it like a constant reminder, or is this something that you still like kind of look back on with bitterness? Or tell me how that formed you, how that shaped you.
Growing up, he would call all the time and say that he was coming, or say that he was going to send child support, or that he was going to take me shopping before school and things like that. And it never happened. So I think if it was just a one-time thing, like he just said he was going to come and then never came and then never heard from him again, it might have been easier at that point to do from that. But it was like the constant dragging along of making me, as a kid, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
You know, you're so gullible as a child. I think it was the constant dragging along of making me feel like you wanted me or loved me or whatever.
Letting you down consistently over and over.
Yeah, over and over and over, that built up kind of a resentment and a hate and just a dark spot, I guess, inside. And so it molded me into being I had really bad anger issues as a kid. I tried not to let them out. You know, it wasn't like I was constantly getting in fights or something like that, or cursing out people or something like that. Because, the way my grandparents and my mother raised me was, respectfully and treat people like you want to be treated and stuff like that. But it molded a lot of internal rage, I think. And it took a long time I'm not past it anymore. What happened is I got to a certain point where in order for me to not suffer, I had to
let it go,
not care anymore.
Yeah.
I had to not care about my dad. I had to not care whether he showed up or not. And
you say not care. Is that like numbing yourself to it, or is that actually like letting go of it?
Yeah, I just had to let go. I just had to know he's not coming. He doesn't want me. And if he doesn't want me, then I don't want him.
Is there a difference between forgiving him for it or just like putting up the wall against him? What do you lean more towards?
Forgiveness is what I should do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I forgive him, but I've forgotten about it.
Sure.
I don't let it hold resentment anymore. I don't let it hold, it takes effort to hate someone.
Yeah.
It takes effort to like them, and it takes an equal amount or sometimes more effort to hate someone.
Yeah.
So it became to a certain point where I just wasn't going to put any effort into it at all anymore. I was just going to live my life and be happy with what I have in front of me.
Sure. It sounds like you'll live life despite him, and it's like you'll like kind of numb him and wall him off from your life, that you don't want to do with him anymore.
I mean, and I wouldn't even say contact, I found his Facebook profile. At least I thought it was his Facebook profile. Didn't know if it was in use, if he ever logged on it or what. But I sent him a message the day Kaylee was born, when I was 19 years old, and said, I'm not looking to rekindle a relationship or anything like that. I just wanted to let you know that you're a grandfather now, and here's a picture. Sent him a picture, and didn't expect to hear anything from him, and never did, but at least I was like in my heart mentally able to know, at least I let him know.
Yeah, you did your part.
Yeah.
For sure. Why did he leave in the first place?
Wasn't ready to be a dad. He was 18 years old when my mom had me.
Wow. Okay. 18, left, wasn't ready to be a dad, didn't want the responsibility. And you said you were 19 when you became a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's like real close there. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. So you and I grew up basically together. I'm not that much older than you, and we grew up in the church. When did you come to Christ, or when did you start thinking about Jesus, and how did the church play a role in your childhood?
The first trip we took, ATF, that's what it was.
ATF.
We went to ATF. The first trip that we took to ATF was not the trip that I had met Whitney at. I met Whitney the second time we went, because the first time we went to ATF, we didn't go to Universal and all that stuff. We just made the trip, went the 2 days to ATF.
Miami.
Yeah. And that they did this thing on stage. Everybody was having the concert, having fun, everything, and then they kind of slowed it down and had this ceremony on stage where I guess it was kind of like a service, like a little mini service, I guess, in between the concert and stuff like that. And they just did this time where they were playing a little music, and they asked if anybody feels compelled to come down and get saved. to do so if they felt like it. They had a big open place on the floor where people could walk up and kind of just kneel in front of the stage. And I felt a huge tug. And so I went down there, and that was, I think, the time that I realized, like, because, growing up in a church all those years, God's real.
Sure.
There's things that happen that you can't explain. There's things that you feel inside that you couldn't explain to somebody else if you tried. So I knew growing up, going to Sunlight since I was like 2 years old, that there was a God, but it doesn't mean that he's your God yet, I guess.
Yeah.
And at that point, when I went down there on the floor, I felt like he was talking to me, and I got saved by him, and he let me know everything was okay. And yeah, so we came back on Saturday. We went down Friday and Saturday and maybe it was Thursday and Friday we went down. And we came back on Saturday, and Sunday morning at church, Pastor Scott had us come up on stage and tell our story. And we told our story in front of the whole congregation. And yeah, that was kind of,
wow.
That was when it happened.
Wow, that's awesome. So it was a Christian conference or concert that did it. Did your life change dramatically afterwards? Not that much afterwards. I still knew you, of course, but like, how was your way of thinking or value system? Like, what'd you value? How did Christ change your life, if at all, too much or too little?
I think once I got saved, it definitely made me more interested in church.
Okay.
The services became more about paying attention and less about, hey man, come on, let's wrap this up. We've got kickoff soon.
Sure.
So, and that's the one thing about, for me, with Pastor Scott, when he came to, because I grew up on Pastor Jim, who was the pastor at Sunlight before Pastor Scott came. And Pastor Scott came, and I mean, it's just something that he does. He clicks with people so well.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a person who can take talking about like the Chicago Cubs and turn it into a service.
Yeah.
And so it was so weird. But once I got saved, I started paying attention when we went to service.
There's a value to the sermon.
Yeah. And when I started paying attention, I was like, man, he's really good.
Yeah, it's good.
Like, I couldn't believe how well he was able to make stuff for any age group. He was able to make it relatable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was where it started to kind of change for me. And I was always kind of sort of involved in the youth group, and, because I'd been there so long, but it got me a lot more involved. I would say once I got saved, made me more involved, more like it made me the drive was to go to church was there.
Sure. More
so than it was before.
You fell more and more in love. You were walking deeper into it. It wasn't like a crazy change. It was like slow and gradual.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you meet your girlfriend, your honey boo at the time, Whitney, and then you guys start dating. How does God affect your dating life? What happened there? I'm assuming you guys at 19 unplanned pregnancy. Walk us through this part of your life.
Yeah, I think that definitely being a teenager with all the hormones and things that you have going on, your walk with Christ kind of becomes the last thing on your mind. And it did for us too, as I'm sure with many other teenagers, and we kind of fell away from it. Now we still went to church sometimes on Sundays. We weren't like habitual churchgoers, but yeah, I mean, our walk with Christ definitely veered off. Unprotected sex and an unplanned pregnancy and things like that. So we definitely weren't walking like the Christ-driven path, but we both still believed, but
yeah. What was going through your brain? Like, what was the first thoughts when you thought, man, I'm a father? Was it fear? Was it excitement? What happened?
Oh, at that age, total fear.
Yeah.
Total fear.
Just,
But it became, it came to a point where something kind of, it was total fear, but it was also something snapped in my head at that point, because at that point in time, and I'll never say that I would change it at all, because of the fact that I'm the type of person that unless something in life, whether it's a person or a thing or an event that happens that gives me a swift kick in the backside,
mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, it won't register. I've been told my entire life, you love to learn the hard way. And I guess I do. So for me, it took having Kaylee to have that wake up call to kind of grow up.
Okay.
I mean, most 19-year-olds aren't worried about acting adult like, they're more worried about, going to school or whatever it is. But for me, it was total fear when she was born at first, but then it kind of clicked in my head like, okay, my life is about more than myself now.
Yeah.
I have a human being that I have to take care of. So no matter what, no matter how difficult, like, I have to take care of this human being.
Yeah. How does your fatherhood or how's your fatherhood and how you see yourself as a father, how's that formed or shaped by what your father did to you?
Oh, I said to myself as soon as Kaylee was born that I said I will, without a doubt, 100% never be like my dad. I
It was
said
the
that I
negative.
will. I mean, I just knew I would never do what he did to me, and because I couldn't in my head picture how someone could not want a life with their child.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's divorced, whether it's married together and you see them, whatever scenario you may be in, I never understood how you could just not want to see your child. And I can't go a day without seeing Kaylee.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand it drives me nuts when she goes out of town to go sometimes to her grandfather's for vacation and stuff like that. It drives me crazy. So I just couldn't. I vowed that day as soon as she was born, like, no, I will not leave your side, whether I'm with your mother, not with your mother. The goal is, of course, to be together, but no matter what, I'm going to have a relationship with my daughter. That was the number one thing.
I see that a lot, like if we're just talking here, that there's like this bad example of fatherhood in a lot of people's lives, and it's like channeled within people to be like, man, I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be like my dad or how that guy did to me. And I'm seeing that as like a trend in a lot of like younger adults, like our ages, like, hey, you know what? We've been screwed, but we love our family. There's a high ethic of family values that we hold. And from a negative place, which is weird. You know what I mean? You'd think that only come from a positive place.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think all negative things that happen in your life are learning experiences above all else. I mean, it may be a failure, it may be a heartbreak, it may be whatever it is, but anything negative that happens in your life is a learning experience, because you can tell yourself, well, I won't let that happen again, or if I do it again, I'm going to fix whatever I did wrong.
Have you brought Christ into how you parent? And I know you have a second child, but have you brought church or Jesus into like how it plays a role into your parenting?
We are now.
Okay.
I mean, we've always told Kaylee, Luke's kind of too young to know, to grasp the concept of it now, but we've always told Kaylee God exists, we're Christians, things like that, but weren't big church goers. We had tried a few times in Georgia and tried, but there was no excuse to not go to church.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I had a hard time finding anybody that I clicked with like I did Pastor Scott, because it's like we built such a relationship.
Yeah.
He watched me grow up, watched me have Kaylee. He married me and Whitney. So it was really hard to try and find someone who matched, what I was used to, I guess.
Yeah, he set a standard in your brain.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find a pastor like, oh man, I missed that, what I had with him, and I can't find it anywhere else.
Because all I would do when I came out of the church services is critique what he did based on what Pastor Scott would do. It was like I wasn't spending the time really grasping what he said. It was more like I was grasping it going, well, Pastor Scott would have done it like this, and it probably would have been way better.
Yeah.
So
do you think that's hindered your walk with Christ, like a comparison game?
It may have, for sure. It for sure probably has. We just started going to this church here in Ocala, and Whitney saw one pastor, and then I just went this past Sunday, and she saw, of course, the second a different pastor, and I saw him for the first time, and I went in open-minded. Was he as good as Pastor Scott? By far, no.
We're not, don't drop any names or anything.
No, I mean, he was, in my opinion, maybe better suited for an older audience.
Sure.
The stuff that he was saying was kind of a little boring, but I still wanted to give it, an unbiased opinion.
Sure.
So I feel like now I'm just going to have to give some people a chance and see if.
Let me ask you something. What are you looking for? You're saying a good pastor. What are you looking for in a pastor?
I don't know if I can. It's one of those things. It's like you can't. It's kind of like when you're looking for love. It's not something that you can explain that you're looking for, but when it hits you, you just know.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Pastor Scott first started talking and I first started hearing his sermons, it was just something I just knew. Like, it's something that just draws you in, like the best, like your favorite television show just draws you in. You don't care what's going on around you. The building could be on fire.
Yeah.
And you don't care because you're so drawn into what they're saying or what they're doing. And that was kind of something that I just totally miss with Pastor Scott, is that he had such the ability to just draw people in to what he was saying. And I just haven't found it yet. I'm hoping maybe I will, but I haven't found it yet.
Have you, are you guys praying regularly or reading the Bible regularly as a family, by yourself? You can tell, just be.
No.
Yeah. Is there a reason why? Is just like you just haven't been in a Christian routine or rhythm?
I guess, yeah, maybe we need to try and, there's never any excuse for not having time,
I appreciate the honesty.
Our lives, our lives are crazy. I mean, we've got the two kids in school and we both work separate shifts. I work night shift, she works day shift. So life can be crazy, but it's not. It's not impossible, and if it's not impossible, then it's possible, and it should be done. So we need to.
I found that when I read the Bible more, then I have a deeper appreciation. Then I could appreciate a pastor more. That's why I mentioned that. So like maybe something that might help you would be if you read the Bible on your just a small, maybe a verse, like start there, one verse. Maybe then God will use a pastor to then speak through you in conjunction with that verse. Worth a try. I know that's what's worked for me, at least.
Yeah.
So how was it being married so young? What age you got married? 23?
We got married, what is it going to be about? We got married in 2013?
Mm-hmm.
Or 14. Kaylee was 2 years old, so 14. So it's been this year will be 5 years.
Yeah.
So
how's it being married for so young?
21. We got married at 21? Yeah, I think 21.
21 years old. Barely allowed to drink at your own wedding.
Yeah. Somewhere in between 21 and 22. Whitney may have been 22 and I was 21, or we both might have been 22, somewhere around there. But I know Kaylee was 2 years old, so it was 24. Yeah. It was July 5th, 2014.
So how was how's your walk in marriage been? Like a lot of struggles? Really?
Yes. Not saying that there's not any good, but being married so young, there's a lot of things. And the crazy thing is that me and Whitney have been together this year was 10 years. But the crazy thing about it was just, there's a lot of things, even when you're together. I mean, we were together, had a child together, living together before we got married. Now, we did it backwards, but you still, I mean, it's a struggle. Marriage is a struggle.
Yeah. What's so hard about it? What was rough? What was like the number one thing?
I guess the number one thing when you're dating or when you're, something like that, is that you always have that thought in the back of your mind where if, like, I'm not happy, I can leave. And I think once you get married, you have to tell yourself that's not an option anymore. I mean, at least you don't want it to be.
Yeah.
You have to kind of say to yourself, if I'm not happy, we've got to work together to fix it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that you never I guess you never realize how much of a team you have to be once you be married if you want it to work. Whereas because marriage is such a give and take.
Yeah.
There has to be a fine balance, a medium to it. So I think that is something that doesn't matter how long you've been dating or whatever, if you want your marriage to actually work, that's the thing that you have to start to realize, is that, like, okay, just to walk out the door and leave because I'm not happy isn't an option anymore. Like, you have to work together as a team. And
the commitments, the covenant, the vows that you gave. A lot of people see it as options now, like it's like just, and that's where we're at with a 50% divorce rate, probably even a little higher in this country. It's like, it's rough. It is rough. Like, and you have so many options.
Yeah.
Like it's so easy to cheat.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to, like, just fall out. Well, let me ask you something. Can someone fall out of love?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that anyone that you've ever been in love with, I don't think you can ever not love them. Mm-hmm. But I think that you cannot be in love with someone anymore. I think it can happen. I feel like it can happen.
Yeah. The emotive part, at least, right? Like this whole, like, I could stop feeling this loving feeling for someone, right?
Yeah. I mean, no one expects the puppy dog love stage to last. It doesn't. That whole, when I wake up in the morning, you're the first thing I think about. And the first thing there's the last thing I think about before I go to bed. Like, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is wanting to go back to sleep. So
for me, it's going to the bathroom.
So, I mean, the puppy dog stage fades, but it's if you can grow. And that's the thing too, is that anyone who's just been dating will never understand what a love is like when you've been married.
Oh yeah.
Because there's so many trials and tribulations that you go through as a married couple, that if you come out on top of it as a married couple, it trumps any of the other crap that is out there.
Yeah. So what's one of the things you guys had to work through? And how'd you get through it?
One of the big things as of recently was the attitude and the mental change that I went through working at a place that I work at. Because
Department of Corrections.
Yeah. Working with inmates, I mean, I don't ever want to change who I am, but you have to kind of change who you are when you walk through the door. You have to be a different person, because you're trying to give them, you don't want them to have any information about you. You want them to have, and you don't want any issues or anything like, I became a nastier person when I started working there at first. And it took me about a year to be able to to be able to leave it at the gate.
Mm.
To be able to take the mindset of where I work in with me, but not take it home with me.
You gotta put yourself on edge when you walk in there, because it's dangerous. You're in a prison with
it can be
dangerous people and stuff like that. Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, you have to kind of,
and you see some crazy stuff.
Oh yeah. So you have to be able to kind of balance that, that leave it at we call it leave it at the gate.
Yeah.
Where you don't take any of the stuff that happens at work home with you. And it's all cool to say that, but it happens.
Yeah.
And it happened to me for like the first year of working there, and it took a long time, and it got close to breaking our relationship. So
how so?
Just because of I started to get that feeling of, am I in love anymore, or do I even know what love is anymore?
Gotcha,
or anything like that, because you can sometimes, from dealing with work, become so numb to things because of what you can see on an everyday basis.
Yeah. What did you see? Like, what are some stuff you saw?
I mean, you can see all kinds of stuff, all kinds of acts of violence and different things like that. And you kind of have to be, you see patients that are, you see inmates that are sick, and you see inmates that can just do some just atrociously nasty things. And
like what? My brain's not connecting. Like,
it's a no holds bars. Depending on the prison that you're in, you can see inmates that would cut somebody from ear to ear.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And so, you know what I'm saying? Like, so the amount of stuff that you can see, that
affects you. Sure. That messes with your psyche. There's like a mental thing that, like, you see something crazy and atrocious, and blood's everywhere, and then and then you're supposed to go home and be regular.
Yeah. So, or you just have to be, you have to be able to walk into my work with a mindset, because I work at a female camp.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be able to walk into the mindset that they are people, and you should treat them as people. But you also have to realize that the goal when you walk in is for you to walk back out.
Yeah.
And you have to realize that, if an inmate is doing something to another inmate, we're going to do however long it takes for us to fix that situation, whether an inmate's beating the crap out of another inmate or whatever it is. Our safety is more important to us than the safety of them, because our goal is to walk out every day.
Sure.
And so sometimes you have to kind of block out that part in your mind that's like, this is another person, I need to help that person. Because you never know what can happen to you having that kind of mindset.
Extreme caution, extreme survival. For sure.
So you kind of have to, I kind of developed just kind of a numbness to the stuff that would happen at work, and then I would bring it home with me. And then, if we had struggles that we were, like every married couple would have, it was
added on top of that.
Yeah. And I would just be numb to that too. And then it would kind of just put a strain on our relationship, because it made Whitney feel like he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything. He doesn't care about me. So it was a struggle for a while, but I think that now that I've been able to kind of regulate that, we're in, a lot better place.
Yeah. Corrections officers do not get enough of attention about how difficult their job is and how hard their job is. So shout out to all the correction officers out there. And seriously, we want you guys to be safe and all. And I'm sure there's some kind of like PTSD that you have to deal with too, right?
Oh yeah. There's officers that deal with it all the time. We have an emergency helpline that people can call if they're feeling like that. And they'll help them, which is nice that our work has that for us. But
and there's there's this thing where like you can't have that because you got to be this like hard, strong person, but like at the same time we're only human. Like I couldn't imagine. That stuff is rough, man. That stuff is rough. Do you have any advice for other correctional officers that might be listening to this podcast?
I would just say, you know, like I said, it's not easy, and people make it seem like it's easy, but you have to be able to leave it at the door. You have to be able to walk in and be who you need to be, and then, walk out and turn the switch off. You have to be able to develop some kind of mental switch and switch it on when you're at work and switch it off when you're away from work.
And no doubt God is walking with you, right, as you walk into those prison doors too. Like, no doubt God is with you, protecting you up until now, And
have friends that work in the prison system with you.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody that you'll be able to talk to and vent to and bounce things off of than people who work with you, because people on the outside just won't understand. I mean, they'll be willing to listen. Whitney's willing to listen to anything that I tell her that happens at work. But until you walk inside those gates and see what it's like for yourself, you'll never really 100% understand. So if you are a correctional officer, you've got to develop a friend group at work, or somebody from another prison, that just somebody who gets it.
Yeah. How's that? How about the family? Like, do you have anything to say or advice for people who might not be COs or anything, but they might know people, or they have related to, or family or whatever? Do you have anything to say to them?
Be patient, because it's gonna be a development. Every person's a little different. Some person might walk in and be perfectly fine walking in there and have the mentality of being able to leave it at the gate, depending on what they did. A lot of people in the military who have experienced things in the military can sometimes walk into that compound and already know what it's like to flip the switch when you're at work, and flip the switch when you're at home, and flip it off when you're at home. So
it's wild, man. It's wild, dude.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother world that people don't understand. Like, they don't understand that people try to commit suicide there. They don't understand that people do commit successfully, or there's attacks, or there's, fear of a riot, or you never know if someone's got a weapon, or
I mean, we're in our unit, our compound is a mental health unit, so you can see all kinds of
people throwing crap, people cutting themselves, to blood everywhere. Like, I've heard
banging their head against a wall. There's all kinds of different stuff.
Hurting themselves. You just never know. You're always just this anxious,
yeah. So I would say, if you're a family member or a spouse or whatever, somebody working in, especially if they're brand new to it, just have their back and have some patience, because it may take time. There may be some rough nights, but it just give it time.
I want to ask 2 more questions. The first one is, where do you go from here? Right. You're a father of 2 now. It seems like you're just getting back into church, just testing the waters, looking for a pastor or a church you can connect with. Where is God headed for you now? What do you think He's got planned? What do you want to deal with your relationship with God, with like spirituality and religion? Like, what's your plan here? Where are you going?
The main thing is just, I want to find a church where I really just gel well. I want to feel like when I walk in, like, yeah, this is where I feel like I belong. This is where I really want to be. And so that's where I want to be, because I want to get back into, being more involved with God and with Christ, and being more involved with the church, like I was when I was in Port St. Lucie. So I think my next step is just to get more involved again. And
on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most closest you've ever been with God and with Christ, where are you now?
4, maybe.
4. Yeah, you believe He exists. You remember what He's done for your life, and you want to get to somewhere else.
Yeah. I would like to get back to like that feeling of when I was on the floor at ATF.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Ryan, you're. I mean, we haven't spoken in a while, but you are the man of the house, man. You're like a straight man now, and I'm so like excited to see like just the growth and stuff. You got you're a husband and a father. God, I believe that God has placed the burden of leadership of the family on us as husbands and fathers, lead our family to, you know, to being more involved with church and being more involved with God and loving Him. So best of luck to you, man.
Thank you.
I really hope you find a church that you connect with. And but that I mean, I hate to say it, but that's on you. That's on you and me as men. We gotta man up here and do what we need to do. And I'm really glad that you acknowledge that. I'm not trying to be preachy or anything, but this is just like what weighs heavy on my heart, because I see, and like you saw it firsthand. Your dad failed at that. He failed to lead your family. He failed to lead you. And you're here throughout like a tough job, and on top of that fatherhood, and top of that marriage, you know, and you're still holding it down. But with Christ, you got the strength, man. You do. You got it. And if you're ever down in Port St. Lucie, come to church, man. Come with us, man. Come to Sunlight, bro.
Yeah, I need to come back. I need to make a visit, surprise guest visit.
I'd love that. I love that. Let me ask you something, man. Why do you think God is awesome?
I think God is awesome because no matter where you're at in your life, and don't let anybody ever tell you that God is not going to test you, because He will. He's only going to put you in a situation that He knows you can handle. So even when you feel like you don't, like you can't handle it, like the world is crashing down, He's got your back.
Yeah.
Just have faith, and He's got your back. And I think that that's why God is awesome, because He's going to test you and He's going to push you. But no one who's ever been pushed before, you don't remember the push when you get to the, you know what I'm saying? You don't remember the climb once you get to the mountaintop. You don't remember how painful it was when you get there. When you have children, ask any mother, you don't remember the anguish and the pain that you go through of pushing the child out once the child's there.
Once you're holding that baby.
Yeah. So once you climb the mountaintop and you're standing at the top and you see what you've done, you don't remember the pain. Yeah. So I think God is awesome because He's willing to push us and make us grind through
that stuff, through those difficulties.
You can, when you grind through the pain, you'll be happy when you hit the mountaintop, and you won't remember it.
Heck yeah. Amen. God's always good, man. He leads us to the promised land. Anyway, Ryan, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up and speaking with you and interviewing you about your life. If you guys are out there and you know any correctional officers and you know any people who are related to that, be sure to tag them. This is something awesome, and tag them in I think it's a little later in the interview we did that. If anyone who might relate to Ryan's story, please let them know. Share this video, like this video, thumb it up. Let's see some people connect on here. This is why we build this community, is where we can connect all of our stories together into one story. Anyway, Larson, it's been an absolute pleasure. We will see everyone all in the next episode. See you guys later.
All right. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Of course.